G'day, and welcome to From Pay to Wealth for Tradies. Every episode we talk money, wealth, and how to make your income work harder for you. It's all educational, not financial advice. So let's get stuck in. Have you ever sat across from a financial advisor, a super fund rep, or an accountant and nodded along the whole way through, then walked out thinking, I have absolutely no idea what just happened? You're not alone. Most tradies I've talked to have done exactly that. And the problem is not them. The problem is the language. Today I want to talk about why experts make things harder than they need to be and what to do about it. My guest today has spent 25 years in education watching exactly the same thing happen to families, and she's built a business around fixing it. Rochelle Callard has been an educator for more than 25 years. She's been a classroom teacher, a deputy principal, a principal in rural Queensland, and is now the award-winning owner of Number Works and Words on the Sunshine Coast, a tutoring business that helps kids aged 5 to 16 with maths and English. What fascinates me about Rochelle's work is that it reminded me of what I'm trying to do with money. She is helping families understand information that affects their children's future. I'm trying to help tradies understand information that affects their financial future. Welcome, Rochelle.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
Rochelle, in 25 years of education, what's the single biggest communication failure you've seen between experts and the people they're supposed to be helping?
I think that experts are so entrenched in their own language and in what they do, and it just becomes normal everyday language to them. And so that then when you're explaining to the customer or the person opposite you, you just tend to use the jargon that you would normally use and assume, I think, sometimes that the customer understands what you're actually talking about. And I think we also make assumptions that the customer will ask us a question if they don't understand, or they'll want clarity, or they'll tell us, "Oh, what does that mean?" Or and I don't think that's actually what happens. So, yeah, I think the communication breaks down, and then both sides don't really get what they need or what they want. And I think teachers think they've explained something clearly, but that's often not the case.
And why do you think people nod along when they do not understand, instead of just asking the question?
I think a couple of reasons. I think mainly that it's people are embarrassed to ask questions. I mean, kids are always embarrassed in classrooms. They don't want to put their hand up because they don't want their peers to think they don't know. There seems to be this belief that if I ask a question, then I don't know. And I think in classrooms we assume that the kids will ask when they don't understand, but they don't want to. They don't want to put themselves, so they're embarrassed. I think people are embarrassed, firstly. And I think, secondly, there's a power imbalance. I think because I come to you as an expert financial advisor, then I will, I don't want to appear dumb. I don't want to appear like I don't know what I'm doing. You know what you're doing. So you're telling me, and I want to just sort of go, "Oh, okay, yep, I understand, thinking in my head, oh, I'll Google that later." But I think people are embarrassed, and I think that it's just believing that you're sort of a bit intimidated, I think, with experts sometimes.
I certainly remember when I was younger feeling that intimidation when
Yeah,
visiting someone who was like a so-called expert.
yeah,
So I guess I know what you mean now. However, as I've got older, I've got to the point where I'm not afraid to ask a dumb question, even
yeah.
if I think it makes me look like an idiot. What's most important is I need to get clarification.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes it's even hard to know what the right question is when you're really out of your depth.
I think that's true as well, and I think there aren't any dumb questions. That's the saying. There's no dumb questions, and I think that what I used to say in the classroom to my students was, if you have that question, then I can guarantee you that at least half a dozen other people have that same question. So you're not the only person sitting in a room who doesn't understand something if you're confused. So but it takes courage. And it is something that I think you need to develop, or just go to your meetings more prepared.
That's a really good reminder. I remember teachers often saying that, And sometimes I deliver training in some of the work that I do, and I make that point as well, knowing that it won't always sink in. Like
Yeah,
people will still feel like maybe they can't ask the dumb question, so to speak. But at least to try to give that impression that, hey, there is no dumb question, and try to
exactly.
get people to be authentic and honest about the questions they want answers to.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. What do you think is the real cost of that confusion for a child whose parents do not understand what the teacher is saying, or a tradie who left a financial meeting without understanding what he just agreed to?
I think that for a child, it's academic. They're confused and upset, and it's an emotional thing to be sitting in a classroom and not understand what's happening. So if the parent is at a meeting and they can't get clarity about how to help the child or what to do or what the next steps are, then really, that the cost can be quite devastating for a little child. And then the parents feel like they don't know what they're doing and they feel, less than. And, so the confusion creates a lot of anxiety.
Mhm.
And I'd assume for the tradies, that would be the same. I know I went to a doctor's appointment this week and I had to go with a list of questions because if I don't have the
Yeah,
questions, I'm going to walk out of there. I am a bit intimidated in there. It was an expensive appointment. It was a specialist. So I
yeah.
want to, if I'm not prepared for that, I knew I would walk out without all the answers. So, and then what's the cost of that is, well, it cost me a lot of money. I've probably got to go back. I didn't
Oh,
get what
yeah.
I needed. So I think being really prepared. So the cost is, missed opportunity to get clarity.
Yeah, right. I've been to a few of those parent-teacher meetings. My kids are older now; they've left school, so that those years are behind me. But so I really would like to have had the benefit of the knowledge back then. But I've been to some of those parent-teacher interviews and walked down thinking, what was the point of all that?
Yeah.
Why did
Yeah.
I even bother?
Yeah.
Um, what should I have got from that? Is there anything that I should have got from that? You can
Yeah,
suggest?
I think there's a lot going on in education at the moment, and there's a lot of reasons about that. That could be a very long answer, but a short, because there's faults in the system mainly. The system is the biggest issue, and parent teacher interviews these days are timed. They're 7 minutes. The teacher's gone in prepared. This is what I'm going to tell them. The teacher uses jargon. The teacher feels like this is the best I can do because this is all I can have time to get across. There's no
Okay.
opportunity for conversation.
Yeah.
So you have to go in prepared. And I would coach parents these days to send an email with 2 questions or 3 questions
Okay.
about what they want the interview to be about. Because you can't put the teacher on the spot when you get there. Oh, this is what I want to talk about. The teacher's got 25 interviews, often in a 2 or 3 hour block, and they can't pivot that quickly just on your child. That's an unrealistic expectation. So I think going in prepared is really important, and but it doesn't. At the moment, I think also teachers are telling you some things that um, there's some things that teachers are not allowed to tell you, right? They're told not to talk to you about the way the system is structured.
Yep.
The communication is very confused. Parents don't understand report cards or NAPLAN results, or
Yep.
so talking about those things it creates a lot of confusion for parents. So I think going in prepared is the best way to get clarity.
That's really good. I love the way you've said to go and prepared and how to go and prepared. You go
Yeah.
and prepared not by just taking a list of questions with you, but you send them in advance on an
Yeah.
email to the teacher
Yeah.
so that then the teacher is prepared as well. And there's possibly things they're not going to tell you just the same because they're not allowed to say them, but you might get a bit more out of it than perhaps if you weren't prepared at all. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. And I think even afterwards, it's important to have a follow-up. I have a parent teacher meeting kit, and that includes what to do before the meeting, how to prepare for it, what to do during the meeting, and then what to do after the meeting. And the follow-up is really what's important. We're going to a meeting because
Right.
I want to know what my next steps are. Right.
Hmm.
And so, what are we going to do about that? Who's in charge of those next steps? What outcome do I want? And what do I actually have to do about it? And I think
Yep.
Your tradies will, need to do the same thing, come out of a meeting and then follow up with take I guess responsibility and accountability for the follow up as well,
Yeah.
and that'll help drive the whole process to get the outcome that you want.
Yeah, good advice. All right. I'm just going to pivot a little bit here, and we're going to talk about some of the phrases that teachers use, and I want to try and link them to financial phrases that are also a bit, what's the word, jargony as well.
Yep.
So if a teacher says that my child is working below benchmark,
Yep.
um, what would you suggest that means?
It means that the curriculum has a set expectation and that your child isn't meeting that expectation. So they're not doing what they need to be doing in the classroom in order for me to pass them.
Okay, all right. So does that mean my kid's a dumbass?
No, it doesn't. It means your child might need concepts re-explained. They might need longer time. It might be developmental that they're not ready for it. It might mean that I didn't teach it very well too. If I'm, so there's a lot of. It might mean they were distracted. Maybe they were away for a lesson. There can be so many factors involved. It doesn't mean, and I think that's something important that you say that because I think parents think, well, if my child's below benchmark, there must be some major problem. And there's not always a major problem. The problem actually is in how to get the child to catch up because the curriculum in the classroom don't have the capacity to do that.
Right.
So that's the problem. It's not the problem about the child, and I mean, there could be developmental delays or learning difficulties, but you don't jump to that conclusion straight away.
Yeah, okay. All right. And the financial jargon that I would suggest that aligns with the working below benchmark is negative gearing. So that's essentially an investment that is running at a loss. So it's not investments are supposed to make profit. Okay. If it's not making profit, it's negative gearing. It's running at a loss.
Yep.
So that's how I'd equate that.
Yep, that's
What
right.
about, okay, what about differentiated learning?
Differentiated learning. Well, that means that we're trying to cater for everybody's needs. We're trying to have present the same content with the expectation based on what that child's capacity is. So if you want to write a paragraph, there'll be some people who know what that means. And there'll be other people sitting in your classroom who don't know what writing a paragraph even means and are going to need step-by-step support. So we have to present the task and present the learning around the task at all of the different levels that the children in the classroom might need.
Okay. Wow. That sounds like a big effort, that one.
It is. It's not always possible. That's the problem with the system. It's not possible.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right then. Extension activities. How would you describe that?
That's providing for children who are already at benchmark or meeting
Ooh,
expectations, and passing, right? And they either finish quickly or early or they need more. So they need more, yeah, than the set task. So catering to those kids who are beyond the expectation.
all right. Intervention program. Is that different to extension activities?
Intervention usually means supporting children who are behind. Yes. So
Okay.
extension activities usually works for children who are beyond, and intervention is usually for children who are behind.
Okay. All right. So if I had to do an intervention program on my assets, I might have to put in an additional contribution. I might have to do some top up for my
Yes.
investment to make it reach its benchmark, so to speak, or to get the desired outcome I want from that investment.
Very good. Very good. Well done.
Thank you. Okay. Right. One more then. Formative assessment. What does that mean for humans?
Formative assessment is an assessment that I would do with a class before I teach a topic, because I want to know where they're at. Where are they at now? What do they understand about the topic? How do I know what everybody's needs are while I'm teaching. I don't want to just get to the end and find out that Tom didn't understand it because he didn't know what a paragraph was.
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
need to understand what they can do. And usually we do a formative assessment either before we start teaching or during the teaching to monitor progress.
Excellent. Okay, and I might define that in financial terms as doing your research on your investment vehicles. There are several or lots of different ways you can invest your money. Each one has its own benefits and its own possible risks. Well, they all have risks. So, what am I going to get out of that investment? How much is it going to cost me? What's the benefit of that? And what's the worst case scenario if everything goes wrong? So, I
Yeah,
guess
that's
that's how I would align those two statements there.
yep, absolutely.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, Rochelle. You certainly have a lot of knowledge in those educational matters. I've just realised that both of us are doing exactly the same thing. You're helping families understand information affects their children's future, and I'm trying to help tradies understand information that affects their financial future. Neither of us are trying to impress anyone with big words. We're just trying to help ordinary people make decisions. So, my next question to you is what questions should a parent ask at a parent-teacher meeting to make sure they actually understand what they're being told? Let's make an assumption that they've gone in prepared. They've sent some questions ahead of time on email.
hmm
So when they're in the interview, what
hmm
questions do they need to ask the teacher to make sure they actually understand what they're being told?
I think if there was just one question, it would be what are the next steps?
Okay. All right. Simple as
What
that.
am I going to do and what are you going to do when we finish the meeting about this,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
if you've sent questions prior, then you want to narrow it down, not just something, tell me something that my child is doing well or what's the biggest area for improvement. Then narrow down one thing rather than try to go, you're not going to get it all done in 7 minutes otherwise, right?
Yeah.
At least
Yeah.
come out with actionable steps and
Okay.
clarify what those steps are at the end of the meeting so that everybody knows. So I'd be saying to the teacher, so I'm going to go home and do this, and you're going to do this, and you'll email me next week and give me an update on how that's going in the classroom, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I would do. And I would think for the tradies that would be the same. The advisor would want you to do some things at home or get some more information for them. And then, you need to know what your steps are. And then you need to understand what the financial advisor's doing. I think, we were having conversation before we were the interview and making sure that that communication is clear about who's doing
Mm.
what and what those next
Mm.
steps are so everybody knows what the roles are and how the workflow is supposed to happen.
Yeah, that's really good. And that actually prompted a memory in my mind. I didn't realize I'd done that, but I had actually done that. Because in the work line of work that I do, tradies they go out and their job is to find faults so that we can repair those faults. And
Yep.
sometimes they come to you with a fault and go, "This is broken," or whatever, and you go, "That's great. So what are we going to do about it?" So often I'm asking those questions to find out what's the best way to resolve that situation. And I
Mm,
remember now asking those questions of those teachers. Okay, maybe not exactly the right words or exactly the same words, but what is the next step? What do we need to do next?
yep.
So I have had those. I definitely asked those questions at the time. I'm not sure that I always got the answer I wanted, but I definitely asked it. So
Mm.
that's really a really good memory. That's really good to remember
And I
that.
think besides asking it, you need to follow it up. So if it doesn't
Yeah.
happen, you need to follow it up. I'd go home and I'd send an email straight away to the teacher. Thanks for the interview today. That was great. So my next step is this. Your next step is that, and then I'll wait to hear from you by next Friday, or
Yeah.
whatever the outcome was, and then following
Yeah.
that up. I think teachers have so much on their plate, such a big workload
Yeah.
that being really clear on what your expectation is with a teacher at the other end is also really good. I think people find that intimidating, so you just have to be prepared. You are the expert on your child. And
Yes.
the tradies, you know what's in your bank account. You know how much money you're getting. You know what your outcome, what outcome you want from the financial advisor.
Mhm.
So, you have to, I think we have to take responsibility as to drive that and not always
Yes.
leave that in the hands of the expert.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great advice. What's the one question that cuts through any expert conversation? Something a parent or a tradie could ask right now that would immediately get them a clearer answer.
Oh, that's a good one. Um, yes, I don't know if there is one question that would get them a clearer answer other than, what are the next steps after you've had a meeting or,
Yeah,
um, I think if you ask too much of a general question, you're going to get a general answer, and then it becomes
yeah,
fluff, and then people get confused and there's no
right.
clarity. So I
Okay.
think being really, really succinct in your question. And yeah, I still go back to what are the next steps because um, you're pinning somebody down then on what
Hmm.
is actionable and what am I going to do about it and what are you going to do about it. So I think that's probably the question that's going to get you the most bang for your buck.
Okay. Yeah, good, good. I often find nowadays when I do get confused or not really fully understand the conversation, I ask, what's the next thing we should do? What's the first thing, the very first thing, or the very
Yes,
next thing? Keep it
yes,
simple, specific, and we can work out the rest later if, we don't have time to do
exactly.
all of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rochelle, you've built an award-winning business in education after decades as a teacher and a principal. What did running a business teach you about communication that teaching alone never did?
I think that in the classroom, and then as a principal, I think my understanding of how parents are confused.
Mm,
I was a
mm,
teacher originally, thinking that they knew what I was talking about, and I was using probably jargon as well. And then I
yeah,
realized as a principal that I couldn't do that. And then as a business owner now sitting opposite parents, I've realized that that's definitely the case. I think, the burden of communication lies with the person, the communicator, the expert, not the listener. And we have to, as experts, break our jargon down. So it's taught me to simplify things so that people understand. And I don't mean dumb things down because people are dumb. I mean,
yep,
I'm not a specialist. I can't go to the doctor and understand what he's talking about. Or,
yep,
yeah, I think it's really important that we do remember that the people we're talking to aren't in our world and what does
yep.
that actually mean for them. So that's really what, sitting on the other side of the desk with the business has taught me.
Yeah, great. Yeah, really good. I heard someone quote something say that if you can explain your subject to any audience, that's a sign of intelligence. And
Yeah.
if you just use big words and jargon and confuse people, that's not a sign of intelligence. And I think that's a great example of what you gave of that there. Rochelle, if you give one piece of advice to anyone sitting across from an expert, a teacher, a financial advisor, a doctor, and feeling intimidated or confused, what would it be?
Go in prepared so that you
Oh, yeah,
don't, like sitting an exam, go in prepared. You don't feel
yeah,
anxious in the exam if you're prepared. So I think having a meeting, especially when there's a time frame attached to it, and I think going in prepared is always helpful. Like I said, I had my questions in my phone the other day, and I think that I don't need to apologize for that. That's what's
mm,
going to get, that's what's going to get the best outcome. So I think being prepared and following up is two things that are really important.
that's great. Thanks, Rochelle. And finally, here's what I want you to take away from today. The next time you sit down with a financial professional, an advisor, an accountant, or a super fund rep, and they use a term that you do not understand, do not nod. Ask them to say it again in plain language. You are not stupid for not knowing, you are smart for asking. The people who build real wealth are not the ones who pretend to understand everything. They are the ones who ask the questions that get the answers they actually need. That starts today. Thank you so much for joining me today, Rochelle. You've been a wonderful guest. Now, if people want to find out more about you, where can they go to find out about you?
They can go to schoolclarityhub.com.
So that's www.schoolclarityhub.com. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Schoolclarityhub.com, and there's a book there called, and a free ebook, Cracking the School Code. There's a parent-teacher meeting kit, and there's a few other resources. So if people want to contact me, they can also email me.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's cracking the school code, that free ebook. That sounds
Yes.
fantastic. So for anyone that has children at school, I'd recommend you get there and download that because you'll find that to be extremely useful.
Hmm.
I will certainly love to have a look at that and see what I can learn. Well, thanks again for joining me today, Rochelle, and
Thanks for having me.
you're
Yes, I've
welcome.
really enjoyed our conversation, and wish you all the best. Good luck to your tradies for creating financial wealth.
That was the podcast from Pay to Wealth for Tradies with David Kennington. More information at tradiesearn.com. That's tradiesearn.com.